Hello and welcome to episode 79 of the So Bet Punks podcast. This is the podcast about meaning, transcendence, awe and spirituality with a small s. My name is Siobhan.
And I'm Dave. And Siobhan was just singing Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, it's alright. It brings me meaning, transcendence, awe, spirituality with a big S.
Does it?
No, I don't know. There is something nice when I hear it. It makes me feel,
sexual.
I was 9. It's weird. It's weird that lyric is in a song that I, as a pubescent girl...
Pre-poobs.
I mean, that's exactly what it means, isn't it?
Yeah,
no, we're not really.
No, Siobhan, no. It's not quite the full meaning.
It's part of it. Yeah, it's not the full meaning. But yeah, am I sexual? And then there's like 10-year-old girls going, yeah. Like,
was it? I mean, do you think when the Backstreet Boys came out, they considered themselves serious artists and it was just by chance that 10-year-old girls enjoyed them? Do you think they came out and thought, I don't know, we're the new...
What, the new kids on the block?
Simon and Garfunkel.
Who are also going for the prepubescent girl vote.
I think the new kids on the block, be careful there. That's not fair.
Just because you've got a soft spot for the new kids.
I think that the new kids on the block, when they came out... No, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
They were all going for the same 10-year-old mum's
pussy.
Money. Oh, no!
I watched the Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch video a couple of weeks ago.
Good for you.
He was definitely going for the 10-year-old pussy.
Oh, stop saying that. That's so awful.
We can't say that.
That feels very
I'm
ill.
definitely going to have to cut that out.
Oh.
Otherwise, Marky Mark Wahlberg might come and sue us.
I don't think he can. He hasn't got a case. It's true. It's true.
Oh my God. We're definitely going to have to cut that out. Yeah, well, that's about it, really. I think for the banter at the beginning of this episode, just the Backstreet Boys and New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, that's good.
And the fact that Siobhan now wears glasses.
Well, I've had to take them off because I'm getting a bit too blind.
Well, it's a funny thing, isn't it? You've spent your entire adult life seeing just fine.
Yeah.
Then you went to the opticians and they said one of your eyes isn't very good.
I did go for a reason. I didn't know my eyesight had gone wrong. No, I was driving and I realised I couldn't really see.
Well, that's
everything
good.
was very blurry.
That's illegal. So we have to cut that out as well. So now we've got the fucking traffic cops and Marky Mark Wahlberg coming after us.
It's all right.
But then when you got the glasses, now whenever you don't wear the glasses, you really are blind and you can't actually see.
Well, it's the adjustment. It's very strange. I think I need to... I don't know. One of my eyes doesn't really work, it turns out. But it's fine for every day.
It did a week ago.
Well, no. Certain things it gets blurry, but I need to probably just only wear them for those certain things. I don't know.
Maybe this... I mean, we're going to be talking... Just to warn you up front, we're probably going to be talking about a bit of mobile phone business today, and
technology.
So I'm sure everyone's turning off as we speak. But to some extent,
like you lost me at 10-year-old such and such.
No, they were all happy with that. But yeah, maybe it's about when you add things to your life that make them better, you lose something that you had before. I think ultimately that's going to be the conclusion of this episode. So you can pop off now if you want.
I like my glasses anyway.
Me too. And you did state that you were going to be very intelligent in this episode as a result.
But I've had to take them off because I'm going boss-eyed. It's not good.
There's a thin line. See, glasses on, intelligent. Boss-eyed,
all right.
Not so.
Shall we see? I'm going to put them on halfway through the episode. But I'm not going to tell you when, and we'll see if we can hear the moment where Siobhan gets more intelligent.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll happen.
Well, shall we do the little section that we always start the podcast with, in which we tell you one thing that we have done in the last couple of weeks, which has created our life with a sense of meaning, transcendence, awe, and spirituality with a small s. Yes. Siobhan, what have you done?
I missed the bit where everyone looked at the moon and saw Venus at the same day. There was a really clear night. I think it was Saturday night. If you're listening to this in like years from now, then you're like, I don't care. What does that mean?
I kind of like the fact that you described it as the bit.
The bit?
The bit, you just said the bit where everybody looked at Venus. Well, the bit of time.
The bit of time, that bit of Saturday. But I missed it and I thought, oh, that's really annoying. Because I want to look at the stars more, and I want to be able to look up and know what the constellations are and be able to identify these things in the sky. And I don't do enough about it.
It was after listening to that Simply Red song a few weeks ago, wasn't it?
No, it was not. But you kindly bought me a telescope for Christmas like 2 Christmases ago. And it's overwhelmed me with how potentially complicated it is. So I feel a bit ashamed that I don't use it. But, so there's loads of opportunities to see things. And when they come up in the naked eye sky where everyone can see them without need for that, I just feel very silly.
The bit where they come up in
the bit where they turn up in the sky. The glasses are not on yet.
You need to put your glasses on. This is a nightmare.
I swear I was cleverer than this. So I feel a bit annoyed when I miss it because I'm just like, gosh, I have a telescope. Like I could see these things most days, and on a day where it is so painfully obvious in the sky. Anyway, long story short, I was at work the next day, having missed it all, thinking, oh, it's a really clear sky on my drive into work, but it's a bit sunnier in the mornings now, so I didn't see anything. And as I left work, and I had a really good day at work, I worked with someone I haven't worked with in a few years who used to work with me all the time. So we were having a chin wag on the walk out, and I just glanced up, and the sky was so clear, and I hadn't missed it. The crescent moon was still out, and just below it, massive, massive, massive shiny Venus. Like, it looked unreal in the sky. It looked too big to be a star. It is too big to be a star. It's literally a planet. But it just looked ridiculous in the sky. It was so clear and so pretty. And, yeah, it was just amazing. I just stood there for about 5 minutes staring at it. And then when I got home, made you come outside and look at it as well. And it was just...
I wouldn't say it was massive.
Well, you went outside. You looked through the window. That's different. But... You know, it was amazing.
I suppose I didn't have glasses on either, so I probably didn't understand the magisty of the whole experience.
You can't understand it until you're wearing these glasses. I'm not wearing them yet.
It's like they live.
She's cleverer when you got glasses, Dave.
Tell me about it.
That's cleverer. But yeah, that's all it is really. I just saw a lovely, lovely bloody good moon, saw Venus with my clear eyes, and I don't know, I just thought it was amazing. That was a planet. That's literally the next planet to the sun. Well, between us and the sun. It's not the next one to the sun. Many vile earthlings. Mercury, that's the nearest one to the sun. There you go. Do you know that phrase?
No, I'm hopeless at planets and then all of this stuff. I haven't known nothing about any of this.
Many vile earthlings munch jam sandwiches under newspaper piles. But Pluto's not involved anymore, so you just say newspaper.
Newspaper piles, they must have been well relieved. They, being whoever came up with this rhyme,
school teachers,
must have been well relieved when they got rid of Pluto, because they really had to wang that on the end, didn't they?
Yeah, and also newspaper could have probably done it.
Yeah.
God!
It
was already there.
Did you put your glasses on?
No, I was just that clever. When I recall what I was like at primary school, it's about as clever as I got, and I can still remember that. How about you, David? What have you done the last 2 weeks that's brought you some sense of meaning, transcendence, or spirituality with whatever kind of S you like?
Well, my answer to this, in all honesty, is nothing.
Fantastic. Should we go?
Which I think is fine to acknowledge.
Yeah.
I haven't really done anything in the last couple of weeks, it feels like. Mostly because, as I think I've brought up on previous episodes, I'm in a tremendous amount of pain all the time at the moment because I've got a trapped nerve in my shoulder and 2 bad knees. The knees are actually fine now, but the trapped nerve has got considerably worse and frankly is stopping me from experiencing any sense of any of those things by any means. And I think honestly is kind of like, this isn't a sob story, by the way. I'm just saying I think it's, well, no, I hope that, I hope that
joking.
We don't come across as being sort of big-headed people of sort of saying, every 2 weeks, well, what have we done
That's
to
true.
do all of our amazing awe and all of our amazing spiritual experiences? I mean, I'm sure it's pretty obvious by now that most of those experiences are pretty mundane anyway, because we've described them. But yeah, I think it's probably just worth acknowledging that sometimes shit gets in the way, and having an arm that feels like it's alternately either on fire or somebody's sending electricity through it from a finger that goes numb every now and again just for fun, is causing me to not really do a great deal. I also can't run, which I've already discussed a number of times, which is driving me up the wall. Started going out for a walk.
Seen lots of nice dogs on your walks.
I've been seeing nice dogs. That's true. I think that one of the things I missed the most about running was actually the seeing of dogs every morning.
Yeah.
So going for a walk has been nice, and I've seen many good dogs. I've come up with a theory that we humans think that when we get dogs, we take dogs out for a walk because they're useless, and not that anybody thinks of their dogs in that way, but because they need to be looked after and the dog needs to be. But actually, in reality, I think that the dogs are taking us out for walks. Aww. And I think most people that get dogs probably fundamentally know this at the beginning, that one of the reasons a lot of people get dogs is so that it gives them an excuse to leave the house and get some fresh air every day. It's
why when you see like older people who have been widowed, they often get given dogs.
You give them a Mars bar.
No, well, I'd love a Mars bar. When are you popping off? No, no, but you see that sometimes when people lose like their beloveds, and here's a dog, so that you don't just sit in the house and wallow. Which you could do, and maybe you should do, and it's completely reasonable. But, here's a dog that'll look after you and save you and get you out of the house.
Yeah, but I think that most young people that get dogs kind of think that they're the parent, but I actually think it's the dogs who are looking after the humans.
Yeah,
and I think that's how we should view them, because they are
the saviours.
They are the saviours of humanity in many ways.
There you go.
And they certainly do bring me joy. Just seeing a dog brings me a lot of joy.
I know. I saw someone today, and this made me feel really sad. And sad for that person, and sad for the dog mostly, but who was very, very disgruntled when they saw a dog. We were in a cafe, and a dog, the woman was apologising. I was sorry, because the dog was just looking at us. And I was like, oh, don't be sorry. I was like, I'm sorry because I'm about to pester your dog. They're not pestering me. But they did pester another person, and the person just grumpily looked at them and like shuffled away. And I appreciate not everyone likes dogs, but it just made me feel really sad that they feel that way about a dog that was very cute, wearing a nice little leopard print jumper.
Very handsome dog.
Very handsome dog.
I watched a man in a electronic wheelchair driving along the seafront, and he tried to punch a seagull. I didn't know what to make of that. He missed. The seagull was much better than he was at
of course
getting out of his way. But it was a very strange thing. He just suddenly appeared. He came up a ramp and suddenly appeared, and there was a seagull just there, and he just flung his fist out at it.
Did he drive his contraption at the seagull?
No, he was just driving past. It was very casual. It was as if nothing
or just like on. Subtly, you just like flung just an arm out. I hope no one sees.
I don't know if he does that to every seagull, because you can imagine down the seafront, assuming that he goes down the seafront on a regular basis, he must see a lot of seagulls. I hope he's not trying to punch them all.
I think if that was the case, the seagulls would talk. They'd be, oh, here comes Punchy Larry, who's coming out for us again.
They probably would talk. I do think that the seagulls talk. I suppose one thing that I did see on one of my walks. I mean, it's just I just thought all of these got a bit desperate, really. But now I'll just tell you loads of really tiny things that were kind of nice that I saw. But I did go for a walk in Storm Ewan. I think it was Storm Ewan, which we had maybe a week ago or something, and. The sea was fucking wild. It was amazing. It was really crazy. The waves were just like savage. And there was loads and loads of seagulls flying just above the sea, and they were all in a bunch, and they were sort of flying with the waves. And they were dipping down, so they were, as the big wave would come, they would go over the wave, and it would almost touch them all. But as far as I could make out, none of them ever, because if they'd got hit with these waves, the seagull would be dead. They were like massive, really crazy waves.
Yeah.
If you got hit with them, it would knock you over. So if you were a seagull, it would definitely take you out.
Yeah.
And but none of them got hit by them, but they were going really close to them. Like every time, it looked like they were about to get hit, and then they would just get out of the way. And then they would go. They would sort of dip down towards the water as the wave passed, and then dip back up again and go over the wave each time. And there was just loads of them doing it. It was incredible. And I assume it was probably because as the waves were coming in, maybe there was like fishes being washed up, so they were trying to grab things.
Play. It looks like they're playing.
It looked very much like they were playing.
Aww.
And like they were playing in a big group. It was like more seagulls together than they normally. It was like a massive,
like a big old
loads of seagulls in one thing.
Aww.
And I stood and watched that for a while.
There you go.
that's where my life's at.
But it's brought you joy. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean it was quite amazing, but I couldn't work out what was I couldn't work out what on earth was going on.
There you go. Well, you can become a bird watcher and figure it out, David. Why not?
But I will throw one other thing out there,
Ooh.
which I suppose is more just to advertise myself a little bit, but it definitely fits into this. Haste released the first song off of our new EP. We made a little video for it a little while ago, and it came out
on that very seafront where you saw those seagulls.
On that very seafront where we saw those seagulls. So if you would like to watch that, please do. It's on the YouTube.
What's the song called?
It's called "Did They Ever Find Out Who Let the Dogs Out?"
Serious band.
Quite a serious song.
I know.
The lyrics on this new Haste album. So there's a new Haste album coming out in, I think it's the end of February. I think they most of the. I mean, I don't know if anyone's interested in this, but
go with it, David. It's your podcast.
The lyrics really touch on almost everything that we talk about on this podcast.
That's nice.
So if you are interested in any of this stuff, then and you want me to say it in a more concise way than just going on for an hour and a half. I
did think you were about to be. If you want me to read the lyrics aloud now,
no,
you could do poetry. Go on.
No. Then it might be an album that you're interested in.
Yeah,
but go and check it out. It's on the YouTube. Watch the video if you haven't already.
Haste play gigs. Go see some gigs. If you're in Hastings, come
true.
see. Yeah, lots of nice things.
There you go.
There you go. Aww.
So that was brief. We normally go on much longer than that.
That was brief.
We move on to our main topic of the episode.
What we've been thinking about.
Which is, I'm not really sure what it is. We're going to talk and see what comes out. But fundamentally, my idea was that we were going to talk about boredom. Which we will. Mm-hmm. We will talk about boredom. Again, not really selling it very much, guys. I've already given you the ending away, and now we're going to talk about boredom. But hopefully it won't be boring. But this is based on a book that I just read called The Extinction of Experience by somebody called Christine Rosen. I stumbled across it. It's a brand new book that's just come out, and it just came into my bookshop. And we've tried to stay a little bit away. We do moan about, or I mostly, but I think both of us to some extent moan about mobile phone use and what have you a lot. And so we've tried, although it's come up in most episodes.
I was going to say, it's not obvious. We don't seem to have tried very hard.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't think that's fair. I've definitely found myself stopping us from going on about it when we've been talking about something else, and then
we could have gone on about it more.
We could have definitely gone on about it more. And really, this isn't this is very much related to mobile phone use, and the book is fundamentally about technology, really. And I suppose mobile phone being the main thing, but it's about how it is that we in the modern world are sort of experiencing things when there is a device of some sort or some sort of technology between us and that experience. It's summed up very well with the cover. It's got a very startling cover, which is a sort of picture of a very beautiful lake with sort of mountains behind it, and then someone's arm coming from sort of behind the camera holding a phone up, taking a picture of the beautiful picture of the lake. And I think that sums it up quite well. But I didn't really want to, it covers loads and loads of different things, and I'm sure that we would sort of end up covering loads of things. And actually, I think we've sort of been on a small journey with the author as well, which I think is quite interesting, which is about something completely different, but maybe we'll see, but we might get to that. But there is a chapter in it which is all about boredom and kind of space, and it was something that I've not thought about very much. And I suppose the point of it is that when we have a second of space in our lives, we all immediately fill it with normally checking our phones.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way, but I mean, I suppose you could go further with it than that. But so if you're standing in a queue, you don't stand in a queue anymore. You get your phone out and you start looking at it. She uses a very good example of Disneyland. Yeah. She says when she was a kid, she lived in Florida and she used to go to Disneyland all the time. And part of the annoying thing about going to Disneyland was that you spent most of it standing in a queue. Yeah. But obviously at the end of the queue, you were waiting to go on a ride, and then you would go on the ride, and then you would join another queue. Yeah. And now, if you go to Disneyland, apparently the queue itself has been sort of turned into almost like an experience. So you can't. So it's almost like Disneyland knows that people don't have the have the space to be able to just stand and like make conversation with people and wait around. And so they've kind of created these things where there's stuff going on all around you constantly, which to me sounds like hell. I mean, I wouldn't, it's not like, Disneyland sounds like hell to me. But of course, even if that weren't the case, if you were standing in a queue, and I'm certain that if you went to any queue to queue for anything that didn't have those distractions, everyone would have their phones out, or they would probably even be watching a movie or something on their phone or whatever.
Or if they're not doing that, they're being potentially loudly impatient and kind of intolerant.
That's the other side. I suppose that's the kind of comeuppance of this, which is what of her argument anyway. And of course, fundamentally that looks like she talks a lot about quantitative things and qualitative things, and the way that you can quantify so many of the things about technology you can quantify as being good, but that we're losing loads of qualitative things, and those are much more difficult to like put your finger on exactly what that is that you're losing. So you can say, for example, well, that's a good thing. If I've got to stand in a queue for an hour, then I'll be bored, and and I'm standing in a queue, so queuing isn't fun. No one thinks that queuing is fun. So I've got this device in my pocket which allows me to watch a couple of episodes of my favourite TV show. So I can make the most of that hour. I'm enjoying myself whilst otherwise I would just be standing there. And of course, quantitatively that's true. That absolutely makes sense. But the qualitative things that you lose are, well, lots of different things, I suppose, but none of these can sort of be proven as such. So one of them is that like you wouldn't necessarily talk to the people around you. One of them is that you wouldn't have the space to kind of stare out into space and mind wander and maybe come up with a good idea, you know. There's something about that wait which makes going on that ride that much more exciting, because actually the ride itself isn't probably as good as your expectations of the ride. So being made to stand for an hour in a queue whilst you're going to be moaning about it and getting annoyed about it actually might make the whole experience. But again, there's no way of proving that, and we don't really know if that's the case.
Got to go with that to go with, David.
Well, exactly, which is one of our Coens. And I just found all of this very interesting because there's some of this stuff I didn't really think about, and but she also uses, sorry, I will stop talking and I'll ask you some things but I'm just trying to get the sort of main points across, or at least the main points I took from it. She gave very good examples, and I mean, these are kind of highfalutin, but about how most brilliant ideas from the past came about when people were sitting silently. You know, is it Newton gets hit on the head by an apple? I
think that's the story. I don't know if it is necessarily true, but yeah, there's a lot of that. Just staring at Tesla walking through the forest is one she gave.
Yeah. So there's lots
comes to mind.
There's lots of sort of really big steps in our evolution in the context of technology for the most part, or certainly in science. But I mean, I think generally that you kind of need space in order to do.
Definitely.
And I think art is obviously like a really obvious one about that. You're not going to write anything of any worth if you don't give your brain the space to sit down and actually write and get away from everything else. And I suppose there's a different, so you could say, well, okay, I'm someone who lives in the modern world and I'm on my phone all the time, or I'm watching Netflix all the time, or I'm on my laptop all the time, or whatever, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm also, I don't know, an artist, right? And I paint. And so when I paint, I put all of those things in the other room. I go and I give myself X amount of hours to go and concentrate on my art. That's what I do during those hours. Now, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and that could be good. But I do think, and again, this is completely unprovable and completely like I'm going to get quantitative and qualitative mixed up, but it's completely unprovable. But in my mind, it's like the ideas for what you're going to spend those few hours doing in your art don't come from giving yourself a window to say this is the time where I'm going to be creative. They come from leading a creative life.
Well, and I think also we don't have as much control over our brain as we think we do. So I think it's a bit big-headed of us in a way, because our brain does a lot of those connections while we're not conscious or while we're not actively thinking. So you're exactly right. That's where mind wandering comes in. It will be provable. Goodness knows I wouldn't be able to tell you right now how it's provable, but definitely read that your brain is just doing so much when you're not actively trying to use it. It's why we dream. It's why we do so much. Our brain is doing so much of it without us being conscious of it. And so we need that mind-wandering time for our brain to chill out and put a few things together that maybe we can't consciously do. Which is why, like, I 100%, if I sit down and go, right, I'm now going to concentrate on this, that, and the other, I can nudge myself into flow state eventually. Like, say if it was revising or reading or writing something where I've got source material that you're writing from. But yeah, on the times where I've tried to write song lyrics and I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to set myself 2-3 hours and I'm just going to start. Like, they're not the times where you're creative. My most creative time is when I'm driving home from work. Those 40 minutes, every single good idea I've ever had has come in that time. And it's about pulling over really quickly and writing it down. Because by the time I get home, usually it's out of my brain. But you can't ask for those times. They have to happen when you give yourself space. And what, something you said a moment ago, I don't know if it's from the book or whether it's just the way that you worded it, but it was, we're always trying to make the best use of our time. So if we've got 5 minutes to wait in a queue, we don't think I'm just going to daydream. We think, how can I better use this time?
Yeah.
You get your phone out, you check
Otherwise
your emails,
you feel like
or
you're wasting it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, actually, are we? It's definitely where you're saying the qualitative and the quantitative stuff comes in. Like, quantity wise, we're using up the time, but is it useful time? Have we just actually wasted it doing something menial and quick without having to wait? I mean, there's loads of things that we don't get from that waiting, but yeah, it's just something that you said, the best use of time struck me, because I was like, in the long run, that is not a good use of your time at all.
No.
But we are convinced. I am absolutely, how can I make the best use of, how can I do 5 things at once to make the better use of this 5 minutes? And then if you sat still and just chilled out for a bit, your brain might relax and you might actually have a better 5-10 minutes, or the rest of your day might be better if you just chilled out for a bit.
But that's where it gets very existential and very obscure and completely impossible to say for certain. But the thing is like, what do you lose? So it's one thing to say, I don't want to waste half an hour in a post office queue, so I'm gonna check my emails and reply to all of my emails and get that done because I need to get that done. And that's fine. It makes perfect sense. But you don't know what you've lost. Because if you've not spent that half an hour standing doing nothing, it means that you've not had the opportunity to possibly come up with an idea of something that you're going to do, or possibly think over something that happened to you a few days ago and kind of get to the bottom of it, or something. I don't really know. That's the thing. There's no absolute. There's not like an example that you can give. I mean, I'm sure I can think of things in my own life. I mean, I'm the same. My best ideas. So I used to. So for a period of time, I wrote poems every day during COVID, and in that context, I actually found it really good and quite useful to give myself like an hour, or probably longer, but whatever, an amount of time every morning, because we were in lockdown and we had the time. So I gave myself an hour or maybe even 2 hours every morning. I would write a poem, and I'd go through a whole process because I was typing them up on a typewriter, taking a photo and putting them on Instagram, which, again, we can critique the end goal of that maybe, but the process was quite a good one. I wrote a first draft, then I wrote a second draft, then I typed it out slowly on a typewriter and had to get it all right. So that kind of brought in although I was kind of just typing up what I'd written, it also gives you another sort of editing stage. And so, I came away from that thinking to myself, yeah, it's really good if you give yourself an hour and say you've got to do something and you've got to start it and finish it. Then that's quite healthy. And I think that is, because a lot of people, particularly when they do creative things, they can never finish it. I've got loads of friends like this who are a million times more talented than I am, and they start things and they just never finish them, so they never come out. So you see these things or these plans, or they tell you what they're planning, and you think, God, that's going to be amazing. And you know that they're talented enough to do it, and you know how good it's going to be. And then they spend hours and hours or days or even weeks or months or whatever working on it, but they never get to the finish line because they've never given themselves an end point. There's no sort of deadline. And and I think everyone must have experienced that at school. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you've got an assignment due or whatever, you just sit around and don't do it and don't do it and don't do it, and then when the deadline comes up, then all of a sudden you come out of it.
Yeah.
You know, create something. But the thing that I don't, so that's the narrative that I can give to that. The narrative I could say is during COVID, I gave myself an hour or 2 hours every day to create something from scratch and finish it and put it into the world so that, you know, I had a kind of, it was completely made up, but I'd kind of set myself this task.
Yeah. You were accountable to the invisible audience, as it were.
Yeah. Which was quite a positive thing. I mean, that's the sort of good use of social media, maybe. Although I'd question that now. But anyway. But what that ignores is the fact that, yes, maybe the first 2 or 3 days, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this is very specific to lockdown and very specific to not having anything else to do. But what I don't appreciate about that is that actually outside of that time, there was loads of other things that I was doing in order to get to that point where I ended up writing. All that hour was giving me the space to sit at a desk with a pen.
But you already had the source material from your ideas because your ideas were coming up in the other spaces.
Well, most of them came. They came in the same way. I would spend the rest of a good chunk of the day, or maybe the evening, sort of not officially researching, but just kind of watching interesting shit or reading books or whatever. And something would jump out from there that would be a vague idea. And then the next morning I would go for a run. And while I was on that run, I would come up with at least a line or 2 lines or something that would then be the impetus. And so that's actually the important bit.
Yeah.
And so you saying about the driving thing, one of the examples that's used, I think, in the book, but I've definitely heard this example used a lot, is that a lot of people come up with really good ideas in the shower. Because the shower is like the place where the technology can't come.
And you've got this like dulling of one sense entirely. Like your ears have gone because you've got this lovely kind of like background hum noise. And there is something about, I mean, there's definitely got to be some science about drone music and just drone sounds. Or white noise, for example. People sleep better when there's white noise. Or raindrops or something. Like when you can dull a sense, maybe everything else comes up.
I mean, you've opened a door there a little bit, because I think the only reason that you need white noise or you need the sound of rain is because your brain is so busy from filling it up with loads of shit.
True. Maybe in the modern day, but there's definitely. I wonder if there is something to. But anyway, let's not go down that hole so much. But yeah, I can definitely see it. Driving, I think it's like that slow. Obviously, you're concentrating. There's definitely stuff about this in Thinking Fast and Slow as well, the Daniel Kahneman book. But that kind of, it's a task that is occupying your brain, but not. It's occupying like one way in which you work, like your kind of instinctive brain.
Well, it
and
takes
something frees
away.
Up something else there.
But maybe that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
So because that only comes about. So if you fill your brain up with, if you say, well, I'm going to be bored for the next half an hour, so I'm going to watch a TV show.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to. That removes any.
You don't have the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before a little bit. I mean, I think TV is increasingly being made to not to sort of. We've definitely talked about this before, but very quickly, I truly believe art is made for fundamentally, like, there's 2 big different types of art. There's a type of art which is made to sort of wake you up, turn you on, make you think about things, and it doesn't have to be super intellectual, but just something that's like got some ideas,
driving things forward.
Well, not even necessarily driving things forward. It can be a discussion of something very old or whatever, but just the intent. The intent is we want the audience to think about this thing, or art. And I've questioned some of the things I'm going to put into this category as to whether they're art or not. There's another type of art which is there to specifically do the opposite of that. Reality TV is kind of like the ultimate version of that, isn't it? It's like, and when you talk to people that watch those sorts of things, that's what they're looking for. People don't watch. It comes up in the book about people not spending their time cooking, but watching other people cook has become a huge industry.
Yeah.
And of course, there's loads of this shit on YouTube as well, isn't there? Unboxing videos and. Well, she talks a lot about people doing quite risky things, filming themselves, and then those videos becoming really popular.
Yeah.
So someone jumps out of a plane or something and
Yeah.
they put a GoPro on their head, and so you see it from their perspective, and then millions and millions of people watch it. Well, that's right. Of course, not everyone can jump out of a plane, and maybe that's a bad example because that involves a good deal of money and opportunity and what have you. But there's something about that which is that we must want those things.
Yeah.
But we want those things without doing them. We want those things without the risk of doing them. Maybe I'm going off topic a little bit.
No, but also not just that we want to do these things without the risk, but it's also because it's so in excess available to us. We kind of think we don't even have to, like, we've forgotten that people used to and can go out and do those things, but it now feels like that other, like we're happy to be the voyeur in that respect, and it's become very normal to be. So, you know, it's the same with filming gigs. You know, there's lots wrong with filming gigs, and she goes into a lot of that. But you can watch so much footage of gigs on the internet now, and not all of it, you know, I think there's something to be said for, like, professionally filmed such and suches that have been made to be viewed. And, that, you know, that's wonderful. And sometimes you can see things that you wouldn't have the opportunity to. But people are obsessed with, like, putting up videos of it. It's like this status thing that I've been there. But people are watching it, and I think people will
I don't
soon.
know if they are.
No, but I think people do though, and I think there's you know it's not the same as being there, but I think it's become so normal to just watch things, and like I say, there's positives to this. You know, there's bands that you may not be playing in your area, or maybe you don't have the money to go and see these certain things. Like, there is a lot of positives to being able to watch this stuff online, but I think it's like, it isn't a substitute for going if you can. And there are people that could be going to these gigs, or could be going to events, or could be learning how to do that fun thing, or could be cooking, or could be going for a walk and doing all these things. But for some reason, there's something about humankind at the moment, at least, whether it's inherent to us, I don't know, that will watch it quite happily, and maybe even feel like, maybe even get the same reactions, like, in your brain, I don't know, as to doing it. But you're not actually doing it. It's not the same.
Do you think that maybe that's because we've compartmentalized activity into useful things and non-useful things, and watching things is, because it's seen as, like, a hobby isn't really the right word, but because it's seen as pleasure. So if I'm somebody who enjoys watching people unbox things on YouTube, then I compartmentalize watching people open things on YouTube as a useful use of my time. So this goes into box number A, whereas standing in a queue definitely goes into box B, because that's something I don't want to do. That's sort of a waste of time.
It's definitely seen as a waste, isn't it?
But the problem is maybe if you get those signals mixed up, and maybe that's ultimately the problem. If you get those signals mixed up, and you think, I'm not going to go for a run, but I'm going to watch a thing, or I'm not going to go for a bike ride. I think there's quite a lot of videos of, again, GoPros stuck on the front of people's helmets.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go for a bike ride. And I think some people watch them whilst they're on an exercise bike, which it doesn't make it that much better. But to some extent, I suppose I get it in a way. But it's about compartmentalizing things as being a good use of time and a bad use of time. And that's fine and good, actually. I mean, we all do that, and we all have to do that. But the thing is if society is telling you that a bunch of useless bullshit, which is going to not in any way make your life better, and actually, and this is again something that the book talks about an awful lot, you know, actually make you more lonely, for example, if you're sitting at home and you're watching somebody do a bike ride, but you're not getting the experience of the bike ride, you're not actually getting any of the useful things that a bike ride provides for you, which is fresh air. Maybe you're there with somebody else, maybe you bump into somebody, whatever, you know, there's a social aspect to it, and the actual exercise itself. But whereas if you were actually on that bike ride, like I think I've changed my mind quite a lot about this, but definitely when I was younger, I was always very bothered about not wasting my time. I had this idea of not wasting my time. If I had a day off, it had to be full of, I had to do stuff. I had to, you know, it would be awful to like waste a whole day. But almost by putting that amount of pressure on myself, And also having a strange relationship with time, because I think in my head it was like, I need to have got this stuff done by early afternoon, otherwise the day's written off and I'm just going to give up.
Yeah.
And that was just, that's I don't think that's, everybody feels that way. I think that was just something that I had in my own brain. But I used to find that we're going in with that attitude of just like, no, I need to fill my day up with all of these things. So I need to plan it all out. So I need to, and I want to, these are the things that I like. I like watching movies. I like listening to music. I want to read something. I want to, go shopping, whatever. I think that as a result of putting that sort of pressure on filling my time up with what I considered useful things, I ended up not really enjoying any of them, and B, often not doing them as such. Sort of just like going through the motions of doing them.
Yeah.
Being like, right, Dave has said that today he has to watch a movie.
Yeah.
Because he likes movies. And he gets to the point in the day where he's going to watch the movie, and he sits down and thinks, I'm not really in the mood for watching a movie, but, we've come this far.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes that can be a good thing. I mean, particularly if it's something more difficult. If it's something like Dave said he's going out for a run this morning, and he doesn't really want to go out for a run this morning, but he's going to make himself. And again, this is, it's all obscure, isn't it? But, I feel like that's a good use of that.
Yeah, you should be routines for the things that are a bit difficult, that will pay off.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wonder whether we've got confused as to what those useful uses of our time are. And I think, and on top of that, you need to add on a whole nother, which is the obvious bit, and something we've definitely talked about before, of the sort of addictiveness of technology, and the way it's stepped into every single aspect of our lives. So you can't not. I bought tickets to a gig the other day, and I had to download an app in order to go to the gig, and my phone is too old to download the app.
Yeah, we're kind of forced to use technology now. I had to do the same with, I've applied for a job, and to do the occupational health clearance form, I was sent an email saying, scan this QR code with your phone, which I can't do at work because I work in a secure unit where you can't take your phone. So I emailed it home, and it says, or click this link to get a mobile link. So I was like, oh, let me do that. And it was just resending me the same QR code every time. I was like, this is going round and round in circles. I actually have to get my phone out to scan this link to then fill out a health questionnaire about whether I have anxiety or any kind of issues.
And you've given me loads of.
And it was like, you've literally made me pick out my fucking phone to scan this stupid.
Oh, that's
stupid
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, and I mean, this is arguable, of course, but I mean, I think there's definitely an argument to be made that excessive phone use is the very thing that's going to cause you anxiety. So it's interesting that you have to scan a QR code in order to be asked about whether you're anxious or not.
This morning I also did a HR appointment to prove my identity via Teams, via the online phone, FaceTime or whatever you would call it. And in real life, what you would do is you would go in person, they would see your face, they would look at the documents physically to prove that they were real, because I've sent photocopies of my documents, they now want to prove they're real. And the way that this woman proved my documents were real was I held them up to a camera. And it just felt really like, is that real? Like, is it real if you're watching a video of someone doing something? Whereas actually what's missing from it just felt very pointless. What's the difference between me holding up to a camera my document and sending a photocopy of it? Well, it's just very strange. And it got me thinking about reality all sorts this morning.
But that difference is actually a very important bit, which is also brought up in this book, but in a completely different context. So what is the difference? But the thing is I think anybody listening to what you just said, maybe they wouldn't be outraged by it or like have any particular reaction to it. But fundamentally, I think that we would all probably accept there is a difference. There is some difference, whether it's good or bad or whatever is neither here nor there. There is a difference between you walking into a room with another human being and holding your passport up and then checking your passport. But there is a difference between that and doing that in your house on a camera whilst they're on the other end of a camera. But fundamentally, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I can't think of any actual problems with that. I mean, that's probably fine. Of course, maybe you could argue that if you had a fake passport or something, it would be slightly more difficult to see. I don't really know. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. On an existential level, I think we can all see that there is a difference between those two scenarios. What the book talks a lot about, and again, this is very much the problem with quantitative things versus qualitative things, is that and more people are engaging with other people in that way, particularly kids, and with FaceTime and what have you. So many people they have this kind of middleman between them and interaction with another human being. And she talks about how something is lost. Now, quantitatively, nothing is lost, right? It's the same thing. So if you've got a screen up and you've got your best mate on the other end of the screen and you're both talking and you're looking at each other, fundamentally it's no different, really. But except we all know that it is different. There's something different, and there's something that's lost. Or gained, and maybe some techie people would say you've gained something from that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But she talks a lot about this, and I mean, I think about the effects that this is then having on the way that people socialise with each other. So the point that she makes, in a very simplified way, because she's far cleverer than I, is that we've lost the ability, or we're starting to lose the ability to sort of read social cues.
Yeah.
And she uses examples, and I think I've seen this in my everyday life, but again, this is not in any way scientific, but a lot of young people who have grown up continuously interacting with this stuff, they don't have the same social cues as you, and so they're not, eye contact is awkward. I get this an awful lot. So when in the shop, there's a weird thing where someone will come to buy a book, which is a very simple social interaction. There's really nothing to it, but you would think that so if you just think about the mechanics of that, somebody walks up to you, you say hello, they give you the thing, you scan it, you tell them how much it is, they sort the money out, normally looking at their phone and doing it on the card, often looking at their phone throughout all of this. And I've had so many experiences, and it is mostly with young people, but I have to say it's not exclusively young people, and I think this is starting to infect all of us, where you would think that you've upset them. Like they come at you almost like they're angry with you. And you sort of think, it's weird because I think I'm quite empathetic. I don't know, but I definitely read social cues. And the social cues I'm getting are telling me, has this person I don't know. Have I done something awful to this person because they act in that way? So, but they don't say anything. There's not any words that are exchanged in that context. But it's just that everything that their body tells me is that they hate me.
Yeah.
And this has happened so many times, and this honestly happens enough times that I can say this is quite scientific, because it's weird. Once the transaction is finished and they take the thing and they're able to walk away, all of them, it's like tension has been removed from the room, and they say something along the lines of, have a fantastic day, thanks so much, and then walk off. And it's nothing on them, I'm not having a pop at them, but I think anyway, the way I read it is that their ability to interact with another human causes them so much anxiety that they're incapable of doing it. And then once the anxiety dissipates because they've managed to do this very basic task, which is then all of a sudden they feel incredibly relieved, and then they're nice then almost overly nice. And there is it's a weird thing. Kids have definitely been taught in some sort of a non-emotive way to say things like, have a fantastic day, when I don't think, they might mean it. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but in that kind of almost like have a nice day, that American thing that we
learn by rote sort of thing.
And it's interesting that you have to teach people, and I've noticed this in and this comes up in the book a little bit, although in slightly different context. But I've noticed this in the equality training that I have to do for my job. They don't really teach you about equality as such anymore. They literally, it's bizarre, they teach you about just basic politeness. It's along the line, I'll never forget, one of the questions is something like, if after work you're going out for a drink with, whoever, John,
no one does
do you just go with John because he's your close friend? Do you B, invite everybody on the team? Do you C, tell John you hate, someone else, and you're definitely not going out for a drink with them? Or D, tell everyone to go fuck themselves or something. I mean, I'm being, silly.
The Waterstones equality there.
And it's no, it's not a Waterstones thing. It's kind of it's a general thing. So I imagine it's a course that I'm sure a lot of people and a lot of big companies probably do something similar. And it just sort of feels, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how is that a question? What are you suggesting that if I just want to go out for a drink with my friend, that I'm somehow discriminating against other people that I don't like as much? That seems a bit weird. And B, are you just teaching me that it's polite to say if you're going out for a drink to invite everybody? Like, why am I being taught this? Like, I understand. I'm not 2 years old. Like,
yeah.
I understand the basics of society.
Well, I guess if all of our need for social interactions, be it tiny or massive, i.e. if you're standing in a queue and you're taught, not taught, but we're socially conditioned to use our time wisely and so not look around. You're not noticing the people that might want to sit in the seat that you're stood in front of, and you might not realise the cues of, oh, I need to move up, or oh, there's someone over there, or would you like to go in front of me? Or if you're paying for everything through your phone, so you've got to look at your phone rather than look up at the person who you're buying something from, or if you're not ordering something from a person, you're doing it all online, and you want to, all the social interactions are made as short as possible. And there's something about, if that's continuous, then it is that thing that you're not very well practiced at becomes anxiety inducing, and then you've got this cycle which goes around and around. So now people absolutely don't want to. I mean, it's twofold. Technology is teaching us, oh, look, isn't this amazing that you don't have to speak to a person? If you go to McDonald's now, for example, you order it all through a screen. Isn't that amazing that you don't have to speak to someone? But it makes us incapable of speaking to people when we have to. And then when we do have to, which we should want to because we're social creatures, and we can get onto that in a minute, we're incapable of doing so. I felt it after COVID, that all of a sudden I wasn't that good at talking to people in the same way. Or maybe I wasn't good at it, but I definitely felt worse at it. And it felt, I've never been anxious to speak to people, but all of a sudden I felt a bit anxious to speak to people. I had someone who had just come back from work recently. He was off with a back issue for 4 months. Watching him make a phone call was hilarious because I've known him the whole time I've worked there. He was answering the phone and saying things that I'm like, when did you become like awkward dad jokes? Like, you've never, what are you even saying? Like, it was just awful conversation. He was like, Siobhan, I've forgotten how to speak to people. This is actually hilarious. Like, and I think we're now a society that have forgotten, not just forgotten, but we're taught we don't have to, because isn't it amazing that we don't have to now? Things are quicker and easier and you could use your time to do anything else. But in doing that, we lose how to recognize with people if they're angry, upset, happy. And it comes up over and over again. There's evolutionary reasons that we know how to recognize these things in people. It's how we used to survive. And yeah, I'm not saying we should all, we have a lot of things about us that are left over from when we needed to fight off lions and such and such and such. But I think she mentions, like, what are we losing when we gain everything through technology? And we're losing the way to actually just understand and be with people. And when we lose how to read when someone's happy or sad without them having to tell us, we're going to lose our empathy and compassion for people as well, which I think
she
you
talks
see.
about that in the book a lot.
Does she? So, but you can see it. We're an impatient, slowly becoming not that compassionate towards people. I mean, she mentions road rage getting higher and air rage is a thing, and
this is people not stopping for me at pedestrian crossings.
Yeah, but it's so common that people are absolutely incapable of waiting and being patient and thinking of the wider than their own situation, going on at the moment. I remember, where were we yesterday? Someone walked up to a queue that had maybe 3 people in it and exclaimed so loudly, "Oh, for fuck's sake, there's a fucking queue." And you're like, 3 people.
Yeah.
And there's maybe like 4 people about to serve. Like, it's not a thing. But what you've done is you've just exclaimed loudly to everyone. And now everyone could absorb that negative energy and think, yeah, fucking hell, it's really annoying that there's a queue. Just take a second to go outside yourself and think, these people are working really hard. Everything's going to be fine. What does it matter? I sometimes get really practical and be like, oh, I'm stuck behind someone who's driving really slow. And I've sometimes, because I'm really boring, try and do the maths. I'm like, right, I'm meant to be driving 60. I'm driving 30 because someone's driving really slowly. They could be going through all sorts. They could have something in the car that means I've got to drive slowly. But whatever, if I just go straight to the maths, like how much later am I going to get to work? And sometimes I worked out it's like a minute. I'm like, seriously, there's nothing worth getting angry about if you can't get to work a minute earlier than you planned.
But also, ultimately, and this is true of that person that sees the queue and gets angry about it, and it's true of the person with road rage, and true of all of these things, is that ultimately, yeah, sure, if you have road rage and you go and punch somebody, then that affects the other person. But I know we've talked about this sort of thing before, but it's only you.
Yeah.
That woman that got annoyed at 3 people in a queue is making her own day way worse. Yeah. Again, I feel like we've talked about, maybe even we've talked about queues before, and we've talked about this exact thing. But, you know, ultimately, even if you look at it from a completely individualistic point of view, because one of my concerns, and maybe it shouldn't be a concern, maybe it's just one of my thoughts, maybe, is that a lot of people listening to anything like this would say, well, the thing is, in a few years' time, we don't really have to engage with anybody. We don't actually, you know, I like my devices, I like technology, and therefore if we lose all of these social cues, if I'm no longer able to read people's faces when I meet them in person, well, fuck it. What does that matter? I'm not going to ever see anybody in person soon enough because I'm going to have VR goggles, and, you know, I don't care. You know, I could definitely feel this way working in a shop. It's like, to them, it doesn't matter to them how rude they come across to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if somebody walks up, throws a book down and just stares at their phone until the thing's over and then fucks off. Like, it doesn't, you know, you would think in many ways, it only really affects me. I'm the one who's sort of standing there thinking, oh, you know, why aren't these people more empathetic to me? But my argument would always be, it does actually matter for a couple of reasons. For one, because if you're getting annoyed at the queue, then that makes your life worse. But for two, and it comes back to this boredom thing, is you don't know what you're missing out on. So, you know, I've also had amazing experiences working in my shop where someone comes and we chat and they're buying a book that I've read and we talk about the book and we have a lovely discussion. And sometimes it gets quite deep or whatever. Yeah. Also, or just fun, or we have a laugh, or whatever. Yeah. The point is that you, as the person who walks up to the counter, maybe I shouldn't always use the work thing, but I mean, it's the same. You know, if you're at the gig, we all like music, we all go and watch live music, and we all like doing that, and we supposedly all enjoy music and really want to listen to it. And if you spend your whole time there just looking at your phone, or, you know, take a quick picture of a band so that you can post it on social media and then fuck off and get a drink or whatever, then that's fine, and you might be perfectly happy doing that, and I'm not really even critiquing it, and it's none of my business what you do with your time. But ultimately, again, it's really hard to quantify, but you're the one that's missing out on something that you don't know. You don't know what you're missing out on, and you might not be missing out on anything. 9 times out of 10, that band might have been shit anyway, and you've made the right decision, or, you know, or 9 times out of 10 you would go into the shop and you wouldn't have a fun conversation with the great guy behind the counter who's very handsome and, you know, brilliant at his job. But, you know, you would, but the reality is that you don't know what you're missing out on. And of course the argument could be, well, you also don't know what you're missing out on by not spending your whole life looking at your phone, because actually I was looking at something really interesting then and reading something great, which I doubt, to be honest. But
well, there's 2 points that I thought of when you were saying that. One is, we have been tricked. Maybe we're not tricked, but it's about what people consider real, isn't it? So a lot of people don't consider their own experience and their own memories to be real, and they would consider a photo or a video of the thing that they're watching to be more real. Like, in the future, I can look back in this, but you're not, you know, you're already thinking for the future and not actually experiencing something happening right now. So it's like going to a beautiful landscape, big area. Loads of people have taken photos of the Grand Canyon. So when you get there, is there any need for you to take a photo of it, the very same photo as everyone else has ever taken? Or wouldn't it be better to put that thing away and actually look at it, experience it, and feel the thing that it does to you? But people are in this world where it's like, it's not real unless you've, you know, taken a video of it. You weren't at the gig unless you took a video of it.
But can I just say quickly that that's exactly what the problem is. So if you had done any of those things, let's just say 100 years ago, when the technology didn't exist, and when we would fundamentally say life was much worse, if you'd gone to the Grand Canyon, well, not even 100 years ago, 50 years ago, then you would have had your reality would have been completely different, and you would have had a completely different experience. And this is the crux of this point. You don't know what you're not getting, because we've all now got a disease in our brains that says, I need to take a photograph of this. Well, if photography never existed, or it was still extraordinarily expensive to own a camera or get films developed or whatever, then that's just removed from it's outside of your reality. So therefore you're forced to actually kind of enjoy that thing.
Yeah.
And I think also the other thing about, maybe this is a bigger topic, this idea of, I've not done it unless I've shared it on social media, is fine. But I think that it involves us all, again, having this insanity in our brain, which makes us think that anybody is actually looking at it. And I'm not saying, by the way, that no one's looking at it. All of you, I'm sure all of your friends and all of your followers are flicking through their phones, but we all need to appreciate so it's kind of like everything else. I don't obviously look at social media anymore, but when I did, if I posted something on there, I would post it, and it would all be subconscious, this. And I definitely don't think I'm alone, but I'm going to make myself sound bad, I'm sure, but everybody is doing this. I have zero doubt at all. If I posted something, I would consider it in my subconscious somewhere as having a degree of reverie, of kind of like, I've got to get this picture. I've got to pick the right picture. It's important that I post this up, or, I've done this thing. So I want to picture a selfie of me at the top of
I'll be judged somehow on what I'm putting out
look
there.
At me, I've gone for a walk, or look at me, I've done this or that.
Yeah.
And and when you put it out there, there's this kind of thing in your head, and I don't think anybody's thinking this consciously, of like, basically the world is seeing it, and not the world, but like everyone you know is seeing it, and that has a degree of importance, but it certainly has a hell of a lot more importance than what you or anybody else give when they're scrolling through their phone and their friends' various accomplishments are just flying past as your thumb pushes them the thing. And you're not really reading the thing. You're not, when I was posting those poems, it was a huge deal to me. Like, I was really trying to get them as good as I possibly could. And then, the amount of likes each one got was like really important. Some of them would get more than others. And I'd think, oh, wow. And it only really, I only really worked this out. And, I can't prove this either. But basically, depending on what time of day I posted it, was why I got more likes. Very much. And this is a few people I know for a fact were reading them. But, I don't say this, it's fine. I wasn't really doing it for this reason. But I mean, probably if Dave, whenever it was 4 years ago, sort of actively knew this at the time, maybe I would have felt a bit bitter about it, but I certainly don't now. But, I'm quite certain that all of my friends thought, oh, nice, Dave's posted another poem. I'll give that a double tap. And then, why would they read it? And it's, to some extent, I totally get it. It was fucking loads of poems. I probably posted 100 in 100 days or something. I mean, it's ridiculous.
But there's also something about quantitative over qualitative. So if you wanted to share some news, for example, and I've seen this happen, like when I went to uni with, he passed away from a brain tumour not that long ago, and he used Facebook to share the message because he was just like, it's going to be quite hard to say it over and over again, so I'm just going to do this. And that's a tool that we have to our, in our arsenal now. But it takes away, and in that situation, it's because he didn't want to do the difficult thing.
But if he had, I'm not kicking someone who's dead and had an obviously awful situation, and I don't say this with any kind of glee at all. But doing the difficult thing in that situation surely would have provided him with something that he didn't get as a result. So
this is what I was about to say. Media. It's about what do we lose from not having those moments. It's for good and bad, and I pick bad specifically because he's avoided the hard thing of having to have those conversations. But that's what we're losing. We're not learning how to have difficult or meaningful or interesting conversations. We're not sharing our good news with our loved ones. We're sharing it with everyone, and our loved ones are sometimes finding out last. So we're then not... I can feel this. I don't think that my conversations with my family are as good as they used to be. And I know it's because there were a time, my mum and me follow each other on Facebook and Instagram, for example. So if I had a life update, in our brains, we're like, put it on Instagram, then everyone knows. And so random people can come up to me and tell me about my life.
Sometimes they tell me about my life because it's something you've put on there.
Exactly. And exactly. And I get the frustrations with that. But I realise, you know what? I should have respected my family and my close friends more and told them directly. Actually, does everyone need to know these things? There could have been such joy and such interest in having conversations and speaking to people directly, be it about something difficult or be it about something joyful. We deserve, the people around us who we care about deserve to hear about it directly from us. And we should be having conversations from that, because otherwise we're going to forget how to talk to each other. And I think we already have. And I say that, it's a stupid we, I mean me, I can only speak for myself, but I know that I have lost a little bit of that ability to have meaningful conversation with the people who I genuinely care about around me. The people I find it the easiest to speak to are the people I see the most. But if we're seeing people less, if we're having face-to-face interactions with people less, if we're reducing our human interactions down to the bare minimum for the sake of ease and for the sake of, isn't it amazing that I don't have to speak to someone on the phone to do this anymore, I can speak to a bot. It's not the same. And we know that it's not the same, but we can't, this is what she was saying, we can't quantify exactly what it is. But we are human creatures that are social. And if we remove all the things that are inherently part of us, we are going to lose something. One thing she mentions, which I think is really interesting, she equates it to animals going extinct, but I think she probably went on to speak wider about this, is if we don't start to care about what other people think, if we can't read those cues, if we slowly lose connection with other people, are we going to give a toss about things in politics? It adds to our individualistic world. How do we care about the people who need our help? How do we care about anyone in our village? Like, for example, if you're doing all right and then, I don't know, the local centre needs a bit of money because there's people that need to go there, older people have a day centre, If we stop caring about or stop reading cues in people or stop giving a toss about people that are quite close to us, how do we care for anyone in our community in any simple way? We're just not going to engage with it, which I think already kind of happens anyway. Well,
no, it's happened in extreme ways with people that aren't like us, even in quite superficial ways. So, I mean, this is, and she doesn't sort of give her some credit, really. She doesn't talk that much about sort of political divide and this sort of thing. But, we absolutely have already got to that point where if somebody just disagrees with us on even something relatively trivial, but let's even ignore something relatively trivial, let's just say something quite serious, vote for a different party to you or whatever, it's not just, I don't really like that person's politics, or I disagree with this person on this. It's that person needs to be fucking murdered.
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
I have literally heard people saying this about people who've really not done anything wrong apart from just believe in something different to them. And it's this idea that an idea of difference is completely abhorrent. Like it just means that they are scum, like subhuman scum. And this is definitely this is a much bigger topic for another time, which maybe we should never actually delve into. But I mean, it leads to, I think, a certain amount of fascism, really. It's like, I'm right, everyone else is wrong. That's based on what we're talking about, which is that I don't understand other people. I can't read other people. All I know is that this person said this sentence, and I've read this sentence and I disagree with that. And because I understand the words that come up on Facebook or whatever, I know that is bad. And therefore, that's it. That person is absolutely dead to me. There's not a single word that they're going to say that's in any way of any use, or I'm ever going to listen. And actually, the world would be a better place without them. Net gains. People keep talking about net gains of people's deaths. If Trump had been hit with that bullet, then I think net gains wise, we would all be better off.
Oh, because if he wasn't around, then the people whose policies he might harm wouldn't come to harm, and therefore greater good.
Well, of course, but this is from a side of the political divide that also is against the death penalty, of course. So fucking work that one out. But anyway, that again, that is a whole other thing. But just going back to this is a bit obscure. But going back to what you were talking about, we will get back to politics just quickly. We're going to have to, we haven't got too much longer left. But I just want one thing that jumped into my head when you were talking about relationships with your loved ones. Mm-hmm. And this is a bit obscure, and maybe I'm going off on one a bit. But the whole idea of love has been bastardized, I believe, by a lot of these devices, but also a lot of the superficial ways in which we've all ended up engaging with each other. Mm-hmm. And this isn't purely a thing of social media, and it's not purely a thing about technology necessarily. It's probably something that's seeped in. But this maybe comes to I'm going to describe it as a religious point, but not religion with a very small r, is this idea of like that love as a concept has just been minimized down to absolutely nothing. So going back to the seeing something on Instagram and double tapping it, strictly speaking, when you double tap it, that's a love. And also I know on Facebook you can hold it down and pick love, right? And the amount of people that's or people, and then in comments people say, I love this, or I love you, or whatever. That's not what love. When I tell you, Siobhan, that I love you, it's because
you double hearting. I know.
I would.
You double heart my picture on Instagram.
No, I literally would, like, if there was a fire in this house and only one of us could survive, I would send you out the door and I would burn.
Well, you
to
can't
death
get down the stairs because your knees are shit.
No,
listen.
That's
just how it's gonna go.
Like it means that like you are the like ultimate person in my life, and will be forever until we're dead.
Just so everyone knows, I'm not sitting here with the come on then, more. I am.
But
this isn't staged.
But when I read that somebody's eaten a bag of crisps that they like,
I love these.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't
throw myself into a fire for the crisps.
I don't know. I'm pretty keen on crisps, so I don't know if that was an attack.
I'm being purposefully dramatic, but I'm just saying of course we all know that. I'm not suggesting that when people double tap a picture on Instagram, they think to themselves, "Oh, I'm doing that same thing that I feel for my nan." But I think the important thing is more subconscious than that, and it's more semantic probably than that. And it's just about the fact that this word, which and all words are metaphors, and we have very limited words for very important things. And again, a huge part of what we try and talk about in this podcast is about things which cannot be put into words.
Yeah.
And love is obviously one of those. But to just sort of use it so much, and social media is up there. Like I say, this was being done long before, and my entire life people have used love inappropriately and stuff. But I wonder also, like, there's probably lots of other things. It's kind of, and in a way it goes back to that sort of political thing. It's like kill as hate and kill have sort of lost their. Those things mean something. They really mean something. And so the problem is that when somebody goes and shoots up a school and you hear the word, this person's like a murderer, right? But you've been calling, I don't know, Nigel Farage a murderer because you disagree with him, and somebody got sent back to a war-torn country, which, by the way, I'm completely not for or against. I'm not making excuses for that. I'm just saying those two things, one of them is literally a murderer. One of them is literally somebody, and that person needs to be dealt with in a way completely different to someone that you just want to call a murderer. Or if you're a vegan and someone eats an egg and you call that person a murderer, you've like bastardized what it actually means in your own inner world.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not suggesting for a second that nobody realizes the difference between these two things, but there is something about this limited language that we have to quantify things, and it is limited, and I think we need to be aware of, like, I don't know, things need to be, they need to mean what they mean, and I think there's just the grey area, and the more, of course, the more time you spend in technology, and I think I've realised this having removed myself from it even more, is that you don't quite realise how much you use those sorts of words, or how comfortable you are around those words, or how comfortable you are about saying, I'll kill all of these people, or because I think I got really comfortable with them, and it's only since I've come off social media, and that really is the only change that I've done in this context. I probably read more. I've read before, and so it's not just that, but also I'm only reading more than I was before because I've got more time because I'm not on social media. So, and in a lot of ways, people are reading when they're on social media. So it's not really any different.
I think there's like two things that made me think of. One is, if you had to say those things out loud to someone, you'd hear how ridiculous they were. So if we're reducing our like face-to-face interactions with people, I mean, it's cyclical. I think you're writing more stupid things, and we're not seeing each other so much. So the normal language has become this polarized, like everything's amazing, or everything's really terrible and shit, and I hate it. Like they've become
the queue in the post office.
There you go. And so it's become really normal to, mix that with being impatient because we won't wait. Mix that with not being able to read each other's facial cues. So we're accelerating our language to be like, this is what I really mean, but with the blankest faces ever, because we don't actually mean it. So yeah, I think the more that we don't speak to each other face to face, the more we're not hearing, like, do I actually mean that? Would I actually say that to someone's face? But also, this is how I feel about some of my close friends and me and my reaction and my interactions with some of my close friends. There is something about, writing a letter might be one thing, and that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. It takes time and it takes effort, and that's lovely, and no one's going to do that anymore. But when we're just sending texts to each other and then watching they're writing back to me, and then you're texting them back, and then you can see that they're writing back to me, and especially if it's a group chat as well, there is a really huge, probably not going to be able to explain exactly why, but there's a huge difference between whether you were all in a group having that conversation, having to learn patience, having to learn not to speak over each other, having to listen to each other, having to tackle not just one person's opinion, but maybe 3 or 4 other people's opinions and facial expressions, and and you have to moderate your language, or you have to think about how people are going to, like, there's so much complexities into it. You miss all that if you're just group chatting. What you're also not doing is you're not giving it your full attention. You're probably slubbed on the sofa with the telly on, meant to be cooking, meant to be doing something else.
Well, you might be in an actual conversation with somebody else. I mean, the amount of times that I'm halfway through a conversation with someone and suddenly I just lose them to their phone.
Yeah. And it's like we're not actually respecting each other's time. The fact that you want to spend time with that person. Like, there's just so much that I feel that I'm losing. So I imagine that this is the case for other people, and I'm terrible with my phone, but I am not that as bad as I was, and I wasn't the worst when I was at my worst, I don't think, and I still find it debilitating. So I can't imagine. There's probably people that have no idea how much they're losing, and that's probably how it's going to carry on going unless we decide to be a bit more active in our awareness of these things.
Well,
which I guess is the point of this book. It's about being aware.
Well, also she talks a lot about what's coming in the future. So I mean, who knows? I think some of this is a storm in a teacup, but obviously AI is a big one. But also like VR, if we exist in a world where potentially it's going to be possible soon enough for us to strap on VR goggles and never really have to leave the house, never really have to engage with anybody real. Yeah. And all of this weird shit like sex bots and all of this stuff that again, my gut feeling is all of that's a bit of a storm in the teacup. It's all going to turn out to be a bit like 3D cinema or something. It's going to be stuff that some fucking tech knob is going to launch and spend loads of money on, and it won't quite work and whatever. But I might be wrong, and she certainly seems to think that there's a big risk of it. So yeah, it's only going to, like you say, it's only going to get worse, but it's only going to get worse potentially in ways that are really like scary, maybe.
I mean, I just think
worrying.
I just think what happens when we don't, not that we just don't care about other people, but we don't know how to care about other people. We don't even realise we're not caring about other people. What we think is a quick WhatsApp chat whilst doing something else, whilst talking to someone else, whilst watching Netflix, whilst playing games online with a headset on, as opposed to being in the room with someone. And this isn't even touching on what we miss if we're not out in nature or outside with fresh air and actual light and seeing animals and remembering that it isn't just humankind's on this world. Like, not even touching on that. Like, what happens when we don't give a fuck about anything else other than our own reality?
Well, what happens
does that
is,
world look like?
Well, what it looks like is the world that we've got at the moment. Because the problem is that the way in which we all signal to each other that we do care about the world has become so empty.
Yeah.
That it's all about us saying, "Oh, look at me!
Yeah.
I'm doing this work for this charity," or "Look at me! I'm anti the right things," or "I'm pro the right things," or "Look at me! I'm sharing this thing on my Facebook wall because all of my politics are correct." Or it's virtual signaling fundamentally, and I mean it's not true of everybody in the entire world, but I think it's increased with. It's almost like the medium forces you to be that. Mm-hmm. There's not. If you live online, then there's no way of doing something good and not being virtual signaling, because if you ever find out about it, then you have to have told someone about it, and you have to. So I would think we live in that world already.
Well, then how can we, rhetorical question potentially, how can we each day, or even in a little way, reconnect with people in a way, or what can we do? So this is literally about, what's the book called? The Extinction of Experience. How can we experience more, given that we are flooded with technology, flooded with, a world where we're not expected to wait or be patient, and we have to occupy our time at all times. What's the way out of that in a minor way that at least improves our own life and hopefully those in our direct around us do? Well, what does she suggest we do?
She doesn't. Good. So, I mean, the thing is, so there's another book called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt that came out quite recently, which has been a big thing, and he's been on a lot of podcasts, and he's
I think we've mentioned it before. He's got a lovely voice.
Yeah. Which is mostly about kids. It's a similar sort of thing, not entirely, but it's mostly about kids. The only thing, so we'll get into this, because one of the things that I was surprised to find about Christine Rosen, who wrote this brilliant book, like I said, this book came into the shop. I saw it. I thought, well, that's well up my street. And I read it, loved it. Just really agreed with pretty much most of the stuff that was in there. Like it's really wise, really. And then I said about doing this podcast, and so you obviously hadn't read the book. I mean, it's only been out for a week or something, and so we pulled up a few interviews with her on YouTube so that you would get a vague idea of what it was that. And She, one of the first things she said is, well, I'm a conservative, so here's what... And she was being interviewed by someone who, it turned out, I didn't realise this until the very end of the interview. He said, oh, thanks, this has been the Something Institute, sponsored by Fox News. Yeah. And I actually, at the end of that interview, I don't think she's... But at the end of the interview, I thought she was a probably fundamentalist Christian.
Well, she was raised fundamentalist.
So it turns out it wasn't. But from that interview, I thought to myself, oh shit, this was actually it was weird, because I mean, obviously we're having all of these conversations about religion and spirituality and stuff, and I'd read this book which didn't seem to be isn't about any of that stuff. Yeah. And then suddenly it sort of came back into it. In fact, one of the early things. I mean, the guy that was interviewing her was very keen to get a sort of religious. In fact, most of the people that we've seen a few interviews with her, and everyone you mentioned it's all elderly people.
Yeah, I wonder what young people think about. Well, no, because I think it is interesting. All the old men who. And one of them is very, very definitely Catholic, and they're all going, oh yeah, we agree, technology is shit, la la la. I'm like, yeah, the older generation that didn't grow up with the technology, or of course, everyone always thinks their generation had it better, or it was better in my day, or what have we lost. Like, I would be interested to see if she's had any interviews with like a younger generation, maybe the generation that people are worried about. Well,
no, I'm fairly sure not, but I mean, whether she will or not, I don't know. But anyway. Well, so I've got some very unscientific, but some actual sort of vague data of my own that I've kind of, because so the Anxious Generation, which again is kind of very much about this, was one of the Waterstones books of the month. It was like the non-fiction book of the month, so therefore we were sort of pushing it. It was it's in the window, and we're trying to we're encouraging people to buy it, whatever. And so obviously, for the last month, I've just been selling that book to a lot of people, and I've been quite intrigued to see who's buying it and their attitude towards it. And I happen to work with someone who I think she's 19. She's 19 or 20 or something. And she's not lovely. Like, I don't really say any of this as a critique, but she definitely has all of those traits of, someone who has been raised on TikTok and she's not socially very outgoing. In fact, in fairness, we had over Christmas we've had two who I think they were both the same age pretty much, and both of them very different people. They couldn't have been more different as far as persons, but they both had all of these kind of traits that you would, almost. I was kind of surprised how much they lived up to all of the stuff I'd read about in this book, The Youngest Generation. And one of them, so we were talking about it because it was the book of the month, and she just said without thinking, she just sort of said, oh, well, the thing is that this book's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Because it's not just about phones, is it? It's not just about phones. I wouldn't read that book. And I was, and it just made me sad a bit, because it's like she or people like her would be exactly the people that should be reading that book.
Yeah.
And to just write it off, because it's a much more complex book than just to say, he's not just saying this is all about phones. I mean, it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that someone who I would argue has literally been made. I was going to say unwell, but that's not fair. I don't mean unwell like mentally ill or anything. I just mean sort of like who's literally had their life, I would argue, had their life really affected negatively by a thing.
Yeah.
Who's presented with a book which is all about that thing, that they should, of anybody, they should be the ones who are fucking enraged about this. Like if you were 19 or 20 now, you should be so pissed off that you were allowed when you were 12 to get on TikTok and spend or whatever. All right, whatever.
It's crazy.
But lose, 10 years of your most important years of life.
Yeah.
And some of it's not their fault, of course. I mean, one of the things that struck me is that I suppose the people that are coming of age literally now, as we speak, are the people that were like, 14 during the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And we've had this conversation before. Like the things that I did that shaped my life and changed me and were like really important and turned me from a sort of very young boy into a slightly older boy, not into a man. I don't think I was a man until I was about 30, but they all, I look back on that year of being 14, 15, maybe 16.
Get your nipple pierced in some woman's kitchen when you're 14.
So many different things. It's when you go to your first parties, you get pissed for the first time, you have sex for the first time, you all the things, all of that you get, you change from being a little child that plays games into somebody who's not really an adult but is pretending to be. At least we did, my generation.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is our generations did that.
But imagine. But the thing is so you can definitely argue that obviously generations have changed, and that's clearly not what kids are doing now generally. But if you were the age that is coming of age now, that means that those years, probably between 14 and 16, pretty much, you were in some sort of a lockdown.
Yeah.
Like,
and no matter what generations come before you, and like, when I did this, I did that, I did this, it is like a fact that your pubescent years are the years where you need to be social, you need to be interacting, you need 100%. To be figuring out yourself. It is the years. I remember, we feel like those years are so long. Like my 14 to 16, God. I can name you so many things that happened in those 3 years.
More than I've done in the last 10.
Yeah. But imagine these guys had 2 of them stolen from them indoors.
But they're like, and if you were just had really bad luck, it was the 2. And I'm sure some people would say, for me, those years were between 13 and 15 or between 17 and 18 or whatever it was. If you just happened to if that happened to fall, and that's just bad luck. And I mean, I'm not having a pop at COVID for that. I mean, I'm not I'm not saying we shouldn't have gone into lockdown or whatever, but I mean, you could see you could be. I'm surprised they're not angry, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. I'm surprised that young people aren't. Maybe they are, and maybe they're angry, but they're so anxious they can't.
But you wouldn't know different. How would you know different? People can tell you it was different, but you won't know. So you just only know what's going on for you, and they probably don't think there's anything wrong with you. It'll be years later when they're all in therapy going, gosh, remember when I didn't go outside for the 2 years I should have been out drinking and having sex?
Yeah, but then maybe not.
Not saying people should have sex under the age of 16, just realising we were advocating for certain things.
Oh, mate, of course you should. But I don't know. But I don't know because it's like you don't know. It's exactly the point. It's turned out the point of this entire podcast is
don't know what you got.
No, you don't know. It's not. You don't know what you got till you've gone. You don't know what you've got if you've never had it.
Yeah.
And and that's the problem. And of course you can't. there's nothing you can do in your life that allows you to have experience. And maybe a life online isn't a bad thing, but
what are you missing?
And what are you missing no matter what? And I suppose that ultimately, we need to finish it really, but ultimately that goes back to something that we were talking about, I think, last week, and that last episode, and something we've talked about before, which is that we used to have rules, and we used to have rituals, and we used to have people,
face-to-face community,
who told us the best way to live our lives. And so now we don't. So now we do.
We have the tech people that tell you it's better if it's faster. It's better if you don't do this. It's better if a robot talks to you.
But they don't fundamentally have one message either. They have a lot of different messages. But I suppose so. But my point is that at least, ideas that people have come up with for 2,000, 3,000, sometimes 4,000 years are wiser than whatever's been come up with in the last 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And so at least when you had something like that, that this is the pros of, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be religion, it can be philosophy, it can be whatever, but just having something that you appreciate is wise and gives you coming of age things, for example, is what we were just talking about. For me, coming of age, because I grew up in a completely secular environment, coming of age was getting pissed with your mates at parties. Yeah. Right. Now that's not the wisdom of the sages by any means, but that was there was a certain coming of age. Now, if you were a part of if you were a Jewish kid, then you had a proper, you bar mitzvah, and you have you go through, you become a man at some point,
people got
and then
in the air.
People suddenly expect something differently of you, and the thing is, we don't have that anymore. And you could say that's good, and that's fine, and maybe that is good. But you need something. You need something. If that's not there, then you need something. And in America, you could almost argue that patriotism might have played this role to some extent, or maybe still does. But then, of course, America's like here. Patriotism, I'm not saying is a good thing by any means. But maybe in some countries there's a degree of that. I don't know, but you need something, and at the moment we don't have anything. That's what I'm trying to say. Or what we have is social media and technology, and those things aren't very wise. And actually, more and more we're seeing that they're ruining our lives, not making them better. And so, where do you go? And I suppose, honestly, what I believe in, where we go is just down. I can't see. And going back all the way back to your question, sorry. I suppose the only thing that we can do, and it's very individualistic, the only thing that we can do is to be aware of this and try to. I mean, the best thing that you can do, I suppose, is just get rid of your fucking phone. I mean, at the beginning of the book, Christine Rosen says that she's not anti-technology, and that she can see obviously there's loads of benefits to technology, and she doesn't want to do a book that's just sort of like having a pop at
bashing it, yeah.
And then proceeds to write a book that's basically just bashing it. But I think I am anti-technology. I think that we need a Luddism movement. I think that we need to, and this isn't going to happen, I'm not going to do this, but we need to revolt against this.
It's exactly what the book I just read is about.
What, revolting against technology?
Revolt against various things. There's something that comes up in the book. There's an essay at the end. It's
what book is it, Siobhan?
It's Camus. It's the Myth of Sisyphus, and it tells a Greek myth, but it also has loads of essays in it. And one of the essays at the end is him having a conversation with someone about the importance of what is an artist, and are they just a witness, or are they someone who influences things? And he's doing this kind of argument back and forth. And one thing that he argues for entirely is people who are wise enough to realize that humans are flawed and that this doesn't need negating. And he's saying, the wisest thing, the last thing that was wise that we've heard is Socrates saying, I'm wise enough to know that all I
know is that I don't know.
Yeah, all we know of our Operation Ivy. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's very wise to know that there are things you don't know. But now we're taught that that's not acceptable, and isn't it better to have everything fixed? Well, no. And I actually think we're going to, there's loads of ways you can look at this. One thing I was thinking about recently is, are we, like, it's very sci-fi and I don't really necessarily go with this, but when do humans run out? Is this the end? Like, are we, like, when do we just accept our lot that this is as far as we need to go and carry on? And if we, be fine. Because at the minute, I think, and this is where she goes with like the AI and with the idea that we can upload our consciousness. Like, have we found the limits of what humans are meant to do? And can we just be happy with that? Well, because we're being told we can't.
I think we've passed that point. I think ultimately this is the problem, isn't it? The Apothecene or something it's called. I think that we hit a peak. We didn't know it was a peak.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like everything was perfect by any means. It wasn't perfect. But I feel like in most things, there's a point. It's probably around. I mean, I don't want to say. I was going to say it's around the millennium, but of course, the millennium was an awful time for culture as far as new metal and terrible movies was concerned. But we sort of hit a point, I think, where most political things were kind of, at least they weren't perfect, but they were kind of sorting themselves out. Most people felt fairly positive. There was certainly in the Western world, no question. And I think things have got better in the developing world in a way that we just can't know. And, I'm no expert in it, but to acknowledge that. But at some point we sort of jumped the shark, I think. And then once you've jumped the shark, the problem is everything that you do, everything you do to try and make things better just makes them worse.
Yeah.
The only way to do it is to sack Fonzie. I hope everybody understands the jump the shark reference. Is to sack the director and sack Fonzie and start a new version of Happy Days with different people in it. And I'm not suggesting that sounded a little bit like I was saying we need to just murder everyone and start again. That's certainly not what I meant. I don't know. I've sort of gone somewhere with this metaphor and got a bit lost.
I think it's just, when things are for our betterment, better for who and why and what are we gaining from it and what do we lose? And I don't think we ask enough. And it's definitely what like Christine was saying, like we don't ask enough what have we lost in getting this wonderful thing, and is it important? And I think so many people don't think it's important that we lose face-to-face contact and that we lose how to speak to people with our actual faces. But eventually, are we losing something?
And the crux of this is that the people who I believe the people are right who would say this, the people that do think that face-to-face contact is important are the people that are being punished by the rest of the world around them.
Yeah. Because
they don't see it. And I suppose this is this is maybe, I don't know, the only way you can deal with this is by joining it. If everyone's, and it's very much, this is very dystopian and very much like pushing it to the nth degree, but if everyone's just going to forget about empathy altogether and they're just going to worry about themselves, no one cares about anybody else anymore, but in a way that doesn't matter because everybody's taking care of themselves.
Well,
which
if
in a
they
lot
can,
of ways
but
is
many
like
can't.
the libertarian way.
Yeah.
But ironically, that I see an awful lot of people that would be very anti-libertarian, sort of almost go into by default. Then the only way you can't beat them, you've got to join them. But of course, if you join them, you make your life actively worse.
Yeah.
So there's a reason. That's why I'm saying we need to revolt, because we need pockets of people who are going to remain switched on to their humanity, and maybe we have them, and maybe those pockets are people that go to fucking church or whatever.
Knows?
I don't know, or people that go. I'm sure there's groups in Wiccans, or there's people in but they tend to be. And I'm really not pushing this point. And again, we've said it before. We talk about religion a lot, but we're not religious people. But maybe that's because where else are people finding it? The only other place people are finding any sort of community is within their political opinions.
Their bubbles, yeah.
And that's not community. That's just hating the same people.
Yeah, it's true. Go out for a walk with your friends.
The wisdom of Siobhan. We've gone over. We've done an hour and
for fuck's
40
sake.
minutes.
For fuck's sake.
we should call it a day. That's sort of a depressing episode. Sorry. I don't really know. One of the things I really liked about this woman when she was interviewed, because having read the book, there weren't really any answers from the book, and she was just very genuine about, because obviously she got asked that sort of question that you asked me earlier, you know, like, well, what do we do about this? How can we make it better? And she basically says, no idea, and I don't really think there's anything we can do. But that's quite an important thing, because it's important because the world is grey, and there are no easy answers. There aren't even any answers. So it's very existential, but true. But the other thing is that knowing that we live in this world where the big rock has been rolled off the top of the hill and it's just going to keep rolling, I think puts you in a position to be able to manage it better. Yeah. There's no point in trying to start a movement to make mobile phones go away, because they're just not going to go away. But what you can do is you can say, well, fuck it, I'm not going to let this affect my life. Yeah. And I sort of feel a little bit like that's what, you know, I've tried to do, and I've not done it perfectly, but I can definitely say without question that getting rid of social media, generally just not giving a fuck, trying to stay off, trying to stop myself from getting information from the internet. I think information, I really do sound like a Luddite now, but the over availability of information, just trying not to get it and just living in a little world where you don't know loads of things, has made my life infinitely better, and it's made it infinitely better in ways that I cannot explain, and I cannot say, if you do what I've done, this is how you'll feel. I have no idea, but it's definitely better than it was.
It's also your attitudes that you've already preformed over so much. It's such a melting pot. But there's something, I think Paul Kingsnorth, he's an author that you've read a lot of, and we've talked about briefly in the past. He's someone who kind of used to be in Extinction Rebellion, has been a witch of some point, and he now lives off the grid somewhere in Ireland, I think.
Not really off the grid, but yeah, he's got a little farm, I think.
Yeah, and he tries to, like, you know, remove himself from various things as much as he can. But something he said in an interview once was something about, you know, it is impossible to be completely off of it and off of everything that we think is harmful for ourselves, because the world has been built this way. But he's saying about that outwardly conforming and inwardly rebelling thing. Yeah. About it kind of, you know, do what's going to get you through it. Being aware and then making choices is about all we can do. But, you know, it'll make you happier and it'll spread that energy to the people around you. It's the reason we have these conversations the way that we do. I mean, it's not that we're going to influence anyone, but it's just, you know, spreading the things we're thinking about. Yeah. And if it resonates, it resonates. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Else, yeah, and talking it out and, you know, putting it out there.
We're going to go. Thanks.
Is that
it? You can email us at shamcityroses@gmail.com if you want. This podcast comes out every 2 weeks, every other Thursday. Yes. We don't post anything on social media. No. If you're listening to us, feel free to tell people about us, but don't feel any pressure. Just come back every couple of weeks and you'll find that we're there. We're like a pair of old slippers.
We're still talking absolute whatever. I didn't put my glasses on at any point, if you can't tell.
No, but I think in fairness, you got more intelligent as the episode went on.
I think it's as my eyes were straightening out.
you are less boss-eyed now than you were an hour and a half ago.
I can see. I'm going to put them back on too. But yeah, well, that's where we're at. Glasses and being generally optimistic.
I have been in an extraordinary amount of pain throughout this episode. So if that's made me grumpy at any point, I won't know until I listen to it back. I apologise. But we will see you in 2 weeks' time when hopefully I'll be less grumpy and we'll have something more positive to talk about.
Ah, of course.
Have fun.
Bye.